join us as we share, settle into our shared sacred space here online. My name is Paula Destang, and I'm your service leader this morning.
Hi, darling.
No more talking. Thank you. Please mute your other devices and yourself on the screen, if you will. Don't need a lot of extraneous noise. First, we need to hear from committees. So if you're a committee person and you have a report from your committee, this is the time to do that.
And good morning, this is Martha, and I'll be looking for people first raising their physical hand. I see Judith. I've unmuted you. Go ahead. Nope.
Unmute now. There we go. Thank you. I'm not taking control this morning. It's so weird. I need to remind everybody that has children in the program that occasionally attend Religious Ed at 12, because of the meeting today, we're going to push back RE to 12:45. Just so that everybody's got a little extra time to finish the second half of the quarterly meeting and grab something to drink or put some food in their stomach. That's it. You can mute me again.
Gladly. Thank you, Judith. See, looking for more waving hands. Are you going to wave your hand, Roberta? Or shall I mention that the next women's group will be on the July 10th?
Yeah, and I sent in some suggestions of themes, but I haven't heard from her. I don't know if she's on this morning or not.
They're actually, I think, away this weekend. So
okay.
I'm sure we'll hear more about that. If you have some ideas of a theme that you'd like to talk about at women's group, feel free to send it in to Ann and Roberta. If you're on the mailing list, just hit reply.
Thank you.
And, so I'm going to keep going. I'm looking for waving hands on in person. Good morning, Lynn. It's nice to see you on Zoom. I know that's not something Lynn does often. Okay, I do not see any more waved hands. I'm going to go now into the Chloe McElroy has her hand raised.
Chris Reed was actually waving her hand.
Yes, there you go. Go ahead, Chloe.
Okay, hi. Hi, I am representing Millennial Group. I have been dropping the ball on that one for a little while, but I have not been feeling well, nor was I sure if there was a lot of interest for the millennials to get together on Zoom, but I recently remembered to try to organize it. And it does seem like we are getting some interest about Millennial Group. I'm not exactly sure what night we're going to do yet, and whether we're going to make it a weekly thing or a monthly thing. So if you are interested in Millennial Group, Millennial Plus Group, please feel free to either reach out to me. I'm going to drop my phone number and my email in the chat. We also have a Facebook group, which is what I widely use to communicate with the millennials. But I also am getting better at checking my email, and texting is very good for me. I actually remembered to text. So I'm going to drop my phone number, like I said. I'm thinking Wednesday night is looking like the best night for everybody. So just keep an eye out on the Facebook group. I'll definitely get it into the notable news as well. And you can contact me through my phone number as well.
Thank you. And if you ever forget any of that information or don't know how to copy and paste from the chat, you can always send an email to info@universityuus.org, or even go on our website. There's a contact button that goes to info, and just put Millennial Group or Women's Group or Men's Group or Parent Support Group, which is tonight the same link as usual. I believe that's on the website as well. And from Crystal Bechtold, the password is UUUF. So it's pretty tricky, but I think you can remember that. I don't see anything else in the chat. There, Chloe has just put up her email and
Martha,
phone number.
Martha, Chris Reed had her hand up.
Okay, we'll go back to that screen then. Where is Chris? Go ahead, Chris.
I just wanted to remind everyone that we are having the second half of our annual meeting following service today. It shouldn't be very long, so we could take a brief, like 5-minute break so you can dash to the bathroom, refill your coffee or what you need to do. The main focus of the meeting is to give the financial report now that the pledge drive is concluded and we know what we're doing, more or less. So I invite you all to stay on and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.
Thank you. And one more on behalf of Sarah Sullivan that I haven't seen check in yet. Be sure next week to go straight to the website to look for the Zoom link. We are converting to a church-owned Zoom link rather than using our individual hosting programs. So next week there will be a new link. We'll put that in the notable news and try and remind everybody. But if you can share that with people you know normally attend that you don't see on the screen, next week we will have a different Zoom link. So if you go straight to the website, you won't have any issues at all with finding the right Zoom link. I can't speak for other issues. Taking one last look for raised hands in the participant screen. And now Joey.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
a question about that. Will it also be in the notable news, or will we only be able to access it on the
It could be in
website?
notable news as well.
Okay. All right. That's cool. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other raised hands? And nope, seeing none, we shall close the committee moments. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. Again, my opening words come from Cynthia Landrum. Spirit of life and love, we gather together in different ways this morning, from computer screens, from telephones, from car radios. We gather reaching across the wires, waving from a safe distance to come together in religious community. From living room to front porch to car seat, we gather as we are able, ready to be of service to each other, to the world, ready to build the community of hope and love as we face this bright morning. We are apart, but we are together, offering our love, our commitment, our hope, and our prayers in service to one another and this world. It's a new way, but an old way that we come together in worship today. If you have a chalice, this is the time to hold it in front of you and light it. And I'll read these words and you can read them along with me. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. And we make a commitment, we reaffirm our commitment to each other. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek truth in love, and to help one another. And a welcome to our guests. I don't know how many there are, but I'll bet you Patrick does. In any case, you're welcome here today. Visit us more than once. Learn whatever you can from us. This is why we came, so that we can learn and you can learn too. Enjoy, and we'll hopefully see you next time. In this congregation, we still share joys and concerns one at a time with each other. Joys shared are multiplied, and concerns shared seem divided and easier to bear. So anyone who has a joy or a concern to share, if you stick your hand up in the air and wave it, or if you go to the hand in the air function on as part of the Zoom program, either way will get you recognized, and Amanda Major is going to be managing this part of our program.
Thank you so
And our next feature in our program is Judith Stein Farrell with A Time for All Ages. Young and old can enjoy this and learn something from it.
Howdy. So this morning I'm going to tell a little story, and I'm just going to put up on the screen one picture. I hope. Tab 5. Can never do this when I need to. Let's see. Well, we'll leave that one up for now. So the story is about one of our founders, a young boy named Theodore, who was out walking. This was pre-Civil War. He was out walking along in the woods one day, and he came upon a little creek, and he saw a little turtle sitting there. And he was absentmindedly kind of swimming around in the creek, and he was swinging Theodore was swinging a little stick in the tall grass, and he suddenly thought about some kids he knew who had been using these sticks to strike turtles at other animals, or to strike their sticks at other animals. It was part of what kids were doing out in the woods. And he suddenly thought that these kids were kids he liked, and he wanted to be part of the group. And he kind of picked up the stick and looked down at the turtle, and he thought about it. And he thought, there's something wrong here. There's something not right about doing this, and decided not to swing his stick down on the turtle. But he was wrestling with being part of a group and doing something that felt wrong. So later that day, Theodore went home, and he told his mother about this story, about this event he had, that he'd been watching other kids kind of messing with the animals, but that he'd made a choice not to. And his mother looked at him, and she said, Theodore, that's an important thing. Sometimes we hear little voices in our heads, or we have feelings, and that is your conscience. And your conscience tells you when things aren't right, when things don't feel good. And so Theodore listened, and he said, so what do I do? And his mother said, you listen to your conscience and you weigh your choices. Now, I tell this story today because that is what we encourage our children to do right now. We encourage our children not to necessarily be part of a group just because they say something or do something. And that is what we encourage our adults to do, to make individual choices based on what their conscience tells them. This is our 5th principle, the right of conscience, and the use of the democratic process, by the way. It is our 1st principle, the inherent worth and dignity of all beings, by some people's recollection. It is our 7th principle, what the choices we make matter in this world. Now, this is a story of an event that one of our founding fathers, Theodore Parker, actually told and exchanged in telling a little bit about his history. We have a lot of historical stories of people. Over the fall, I intend to share some stories of current day Unitarian Universalists that we can relate to, that influence how they became who they are. But this story is about one man who started very young learning about using his conscience and became a very active founder of our Unitarian Universalist faith.
Thank you. Our presentation today comes from Barry Lundin. If you were in a program last, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot the offering. You can tell we're a church because we take up a collection each week, and we figured out how to do that virtually. So as you share with us, we will share with the wider world. And as I understand it, of late we're sharing with the bail fund for people who get arrested for in the process of protesting. And so that's where that's going. That means 40% of whatever gets dropped in the plate today will go that way. So we'll have a little piece of music here while people attend to that. You're also welcome to, of course, go old school and write a check and drop it in the mail. So there, aha. And we'll have the music now. Sweet. Thank you all. So I'm going to go back to what I was saying a minute ago about Barry Lundin. Now, Barry's a founding member of this congregation, and he's actually got a background. So he's lived in Florida since 1966. Attended and graduated from Indian River Community College, Florida Atlantic University, and Florida State. He earned his BA in history and his MA in East Asian Studies prior to retirement just a few years ago. Barry was in commercial real estate for over 40 years. He's married to Marilyn Lundin, whom you'll see every now and again in here. And they have one son. He's been a member of UUU since '75 and a member of this community from its founding. So welcome him kindly. He's going to share with us the intersection of reason and religion. I'm looking forward to this too. Barry?
I have experienced on occasion that I get a video freeze. If that occurs, it takes me about a minute to reconnect and start again. So I won't disappear and go away, but hopefully that won't happen. I love John Mowbray's music. And if you look to the picture of John on Zoom, we should all let John know that the barbershops are now open in Seminole County. To begin with, religion has occupied a front seat in the rollout of American history. The religious movements in previous eras have been championed by those calling for a born-again experience in salvation over a cooler mainline approach. In our history, there have been 3 or 4 great awakenings with fiery sermons igniting storms of emotion and passion like prairie fires. When thinking about these religious movements, I often recall the first Great Awakening led by the New England minister, Jonathan Edwards, whose fire and brimstone delivery, sinners in the hands of an angry God, provided the combustion for that first Great Awakening. For Unitarian Universalists, it has always been the push and pull between moderate Christian thought and the role played by our reason. Reason often wrapped in a concept called humanism. And so this is my title today, Reverence and Reason, Religious Humanism for the 21st century. I draw this from, it reads backwards as I look at it on the screen, from a book that is in our church library. Those 3 ideas, reason, reverence, and humanism, have been Unitarian Universalist building blocks for a long time. But there have been reassessments and revisions over the decades, and today I want to present what is perhaps the clearest expression of those ideas from Murray's book, who was the past president of the Meadville Lombard Theological School. In addition to Murray's book, I also draw upon 2 sermons on the book by Reverends Lilia Cuervo in 2012 and Fran Dearman in 2017. The third idea, humanism, has a long history from the Socratic Greek thinkers who were drawn to natural philosophy, to Erasmus and the Renaissance scholars, to Darwin's Origin of the Species, which showed humanity to be the work of evolution. Then orators such as Robert Ingersoll, the great agnostic, challenged the notion that God took sides between nations or chose to permit suffering and injustice. By the 20th century, humanist teachers argued that we could be good without God. Their Sunday sermons lifted up the events of the whole week, such as rights for women, labor laws, racial justice, and world peace. These too, they said, were worthy of a Sunday's mindfulness. By 1961, when Unitarians and Universalists merged, humanism had become the water we swim in, the air we breathe. Recently, a UU-directed study found that approximately 80% of UUs identify as humanist, and approximately 80% find their in nature. We're going to try to understand how those things come together here. Moving to a historical perspective, through a series of 3 humanist manifestos, the first in 1933, we see how some humanists defined their outlook and how that outlook evolved. First, a humanist posture frees God from the responsibility for much of human misfortune. If life is a random walk through a hazardous environment, humans might as well take some responsibility, where possible, for their own well-being. For example, as was seen in the Depression of the 30s, an authoritarian religion might tell you that misery is sent by God. You probably deserve it anyway, and your duty is merely to endure. But a humanist would say that humanity has the right and responsibility to work towards the healing of the world. Another consequence of a humanist perspective is, how do we church? And especially, how do we do prayer? If we make a religious choice to honor the integrity of this world and to take responsibility for our own lives, then to pray for divine intervention becomes almost blasphemous. From the depths, can we pray for the strength and courage to meet what comes our way, but to pray that the order of the cosmos be rent asunder for my personal advantage? And so in humanist worship, prayer becomes not petitionary, but reflective, meditative. Together we listen for the small, still voice. And in silence, we may hear the beating of our own hearts, the breathing of our neighbors, and the laughter of our children, and the wind in the trees. Murray recognizes certain weaknesses in the humanism that generated the first manifesto. The humanism of that era tended to be highly individualistic, emphasizing autonomy and de-emphasizing community. There was little sense of the tragic. Reason was elevated, while emotion and feeling were demoted. Humanism tended not to be open to mystery and the unknown, and there was little recognition of the extent and depth of evil in the world, says Murray. The humanism of the time between the 2 world wars was too dogmatic and seemingly intolerant of other perspective, especially theism. In recent years, feminism and environmentalism and postmodernism have challenged the humanist perspective as overly rational and lacking in spiritual dimension. Even so, religious humanism was the ideological center of Unitarian Universalism at the time of the 1961 merger. A second humanist manifesto in 1973 reaffirmed rejection of the supernatural, reaffirmed commitment to reason and the scientific method, but recognized that science could be used for evil ends. This second manifesto recognized that both reason and emotion were valuable and worked together, not as opposites. This manifesto also called for environmental awareness and betterment, not just of individuals, but all humankind. It is within this historical context that Murray's book marries reason with reverence and regrounds religious humanism and religious naturalism to bring a richer, deeper humanism to the 21st century. Like religious humanism, religious naturalism recognizes one natural universe and one shared reality. Religious naturalism rejects the supernatural. If there is a God, that God is part of the natural world. Religious naturalism makes room for notions of God and spirituality. Murray looks to a broad range of concepts to describe spirituality. He writes, as a religious humanist, I use the word spirituality to refer to a quality of life in the here and now, a quality that has to do with genuineness, depth, and devotion to values other than my self-interest. Casting a wider net, Murray invites us to consider spirituality as the breath of life, as that which makes life vital and worth living, somehow deeper, more meaningful, and more lasting than the dehumanized world that most people inhabit. Something beyond the shallow and superficial, something about relationship, connectedness, beauty, care, wonder, awe at nature, something with joy in it and love of the universe, love of life, and gratitude for one's own time on this earth. Something transcends our own ego and takes us to peak experiences. For Murray, the religious response to spiritual awareness is gratitude. Gratitude drives away feelings of resentment and despair and transforms us into generous and large-souled persons. And where is God in this? Murray suggests that traditional theism sees God as supernatural and separate from the world. In other words, the traditional sense of God is transcendent, above and beyond. But UUU theists, says Murray, tend to perceive God as natural and part of the natural world. In other words, theistic UUs tend to engage a God that is immanent rather than transcendent. By immanent is meant a sense of the holy as sometimes abide with us and pervades the world. One could think of the transcendent as vertical and the immanent as horizontal. It seems to me that for UUs, especially humanists, it is not God, but we humans who must become transcendent, to think and reach beyond ourselves, beyond our own egos and our own times. We are called to transcend our own culture and self-interest. UUs might speak of God as the life force, the power of creativity, the power of life and love. UUs might speak of a spirit of God, spirit of life and love that animates the world in all living beings. Such a God might be experienced as a spiritual presence of love, decency, joyfulness, and hope. Murray argues that such a sense of God is sister to humanistic religious naturalism, retaining a sense of deity, of something deeper, engaging some sense of an ultimate ground of being that is in some sense spiritual. It appears Murray is recognizing a sense of the holy that might not be entirely inconsistent with the humanist outlook. Murray goes on to write, the heart of humanism should not be what we reject, but what we affirm. Both theistic and non-theistic religious naturalism affirms the dignity and worth of each person, the importance of reason and experience of making judgments, dedication to the well-being of all people, and an affirmation of the authority of human experience. One could expand that to include a respect for all living things and the shared world they inhabit together in mutual interdependence. Murray again, human beings are of great value and worth. We are not self-sufficient. We depend on nature. The human body and mind are part of one unified whole. We have no conscious survival after death. This life is all there is, and our challenge is to make the most of it. The natural order is all there is as far as we can tell. There is no supernatural order as far as we can know. We can only know what we experience with our senses and where the scientific method takes us from there. Murray sees that the goal of human being is to become more fully human. What enriches human life is good. What diminishes human life is evil. Growth is essential. Justice is essential. The democratic process best respects the inherent worth and dignity of all persons. Truth, goodness, and beauty enrich human life. Ethics arise from human experience. Reverence for life in all its forms is a central principle in the ethical life. Gratitude motivates us to ethical living. Awe and reverence at the universe lead us to preserve and protect the environment. Progress, though not inevitable, is possible. A higher standard of living for all people is desirable and possible, though a more just and equitable distribution, through a more just and equitable distribution of resources and wealth. Also, writes Murray, human beings are not totally determined by nature or nurture. We do have some genuine freedom of choice. In conclusion, Murray counsels that we take seriously the discoveries of science and learn from science. We must take seriously both reason and reverence. Reason makes our achievements possible, but only the respect and awe of reverence will save us from the hubris and arrogance that would destroy all the good we have accomplished. The other person whose sermon I reviewed, Fran Dearman, concludes, "Let us live deeply here and now, creating lives that are joyful and meaningful, rooted in nature and aware of our capacity for evil and for good. Let us pursue a realistic hope for human progress and a better world, guided by reason, moved by love, reverent from the magnificence of the universe. Let us be grateful for the gift of life." Amen.
Those of you who have a chalice in front of you, we extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. My closing words come from Cheryl Block. As we go forward into this frightening, exhilarating, confusing, miraculous world, may we offer our comfort to the afflicted, our love to those who are lonely, and our wish for all to be safe. And my very last words are of thanks. Our programs here always have a lot of moving parts, and I want to thank Amanda Major, Patrick Mitchell, Martha Kirby, Paul Mata, and Judith Stein-Farrell for the moving parts that they were moving. Thank you so much for making this all happen. You can unmute yourselves and be social.
Chris,
and then plan.